November 1873. A line shack on the edge of Crooked Fork Creek, Montana territory. Cole Hartley pressed a rag against a wound that would not close, and outside, the wind carried the smell of wood smoke from a fire he could no longer afford to keep burning past midnight. He had $11 to his name. $11, a busted fence line, 4 head of cattle that should have been 40, and a woman in the next room who had married him believing he was going to give her a life. Instead, he had given her a winter with holes in the roof. That night, Cole said something he would spend the rest of his life trying to take back. He told her she deserved more than this. More than him. He called himself a broke rancher, said it like a joke, the way men say true things when they are too proud to say them plain. Eleanor Hartley did not laugh. She crossed the room, knelt by his chair, and looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her before. Not pity, not anger. Something steadier than both. She told him he was already enough. 4 words, and those 4 words would carry them through a winter that nearly killed them both. A debt that nearly took the land out from under their feet, and a secret about Eleanor's past that Cole would not learn for another 2 years. If you are new here, welcome. Stories like this one about ordinary people in the Old West who had nothing but each other are exactly what this channel is built on. Hit subscribe before we go further, because where this story ends is not where you think it will. Let's go back to the beginning. Cole Hartley was not born to ranching. His father had been a blacksmith in Ohio, and Cole had grown up around iron and fire, not cattle and grass. But when his father died of fever in 1868, Cole took the small inheritance, packed it into a wagon, and headed west with nothing but a plan that sounded better in his head than it ever looked on paper. He bought land in Montana territory, sight unseen, from a man in St. Louis who described it as prime grazing country, rich and gentle. What Cole found when he arrived was rock, scrub, and a creek that flooded every spring and dried up every summer. He should have turned back. Most men would have. Instead, he stayed, because turning back meant admitting he had nothing left to go back to. For 3 years, Cole worked that land alone. He built a cabin with his own hands, learned to read weather by the color of the sky, and slowly, painfully, built a small herd of cattle from nothing. By 1872, he had 40 head, 2 hired hands he could barely pay, and something that almost looked like a future. Then he met Eleanor. She arrived in the territory on a stagecoach from Kansas, the daughter of a school teacher who had died on the journey west, leaving her with a trunk of books, a small sum of money, and no family left in the world. She took a position teaching the handful of children in the nearest settlement, a town so small it barely deserved the name. Cole met her at a church social, the kind of event ranchers attended more out of loneliness than faith. He did not court her with flowers or poetry. He was not that kind of man. He talked to her about cattle prices and irrigation, and somehow, that honesty was more compelling to her than charm would have been. They married in the spring of 1873. For a few months, life was good. The herd was healthy. The hay crop came in strong. Eleanor brought a kind of order to the cabin that Cole had not known he was missing, and for the first time since his father died, he let himself believe things might actually work out. But here is the thing about the Old West that no one tells you in the stories. It does not care how hard you work to get there. It does not care how much you love the person standing beside you. It takes, and it takes, and it does not ask permission. In August of that year, a wildfire swept through the eastern range, the part of Cole's land with the best grass. It burned for 4 days. When it was done, nearly a third of his grazing land was ash, and the cattle that survived were thin and weak heading into winter. Then came the bank. Cole had taken a loan the previous year to expand the herd, betting on a strong calving season that the fire had now made impossible. The note was due in the spring, and the banker in town, a careful man named Whitfield Drummond, made it clear that an extension was not guaranteed. This is where we left Cole, sitting in that line shack in November, bleeding from a fence-building accident that had gone wrong, broke, frightened, and certain he had ruined his wife's life by marrying her. But fear makes men say things that are not entirely true, and what happened next would prove that. Eleanor did not come from money, but she came from something else. Resilience that Cole did not yet understand. When her father had died on the trail west, she had buried him herself. In ground, she dug with a borrowed shovel because there was no one else to do it. She had finished that journey alone at 19 years old, with nothing but a trunk and a stubborn refusal to be broken by circumstance. She had not married Cole for comfort. She had married him because she recognized in him the same stubborn refusal. So when he told her she deserved better, she did not hear an insult to herself. She heard a man losing faith in his own worth, and she was not going to let that happen. What do you think kept people together through winters like this one? Was it love, or was it simply that there was nowhere else to go? Tell me in the comments, because Eleanor's answer to that question is coming, and it is not what you expect. The winter of 1873 into 74 was one of the harshest the territory had seen in a decade. Snow came early and stayed late. The remaining cattle needed feeding by hand, since the fire had destroyed most of the natural grazing land, and hay had to be hauled from a supplier 2 days away, at a price that ate into what little savings the Hartleys had left. Cole worked from before dawn until after dark, every day without complaint, because complaint felt like a luxury he could not afford. Eleanor worked alongside him. This surprised the hired hands, both of whom expected the schoolteacher's wife to stay inside by the fire. Instead, she learned to break ice on the water trough before the sun rose. She learned to mend fence wire with hands that bled in the cold. She kept teaching 3 days a week in town, riding through snow that would have stopped most men, because the small wage she earned was the difference between the family eating and not eating some weeks. But here's a detail most people get wrong about women in the Old West. They were not decorative. They were not waiting to be rescued. Eleanor Hartley was, by any honest measure, the reason that ranch survived that winter, and Cole knew it, even if his pride made it hard to say out loud. One night in January, after a day spent digging cattle out of a snowdrift that had nearly buried 3 of them alive, Cole came in frozen to the bone and found Eleanor at the table, going through the household accounts by lamplight. She did not look up right away. When she did, her face told him everything before she said a word. They were going to lose the ranch. Not maybe, not possibly. The numbers, laid out in her careful schoolteacher's handwriting, showed it plainly. Even if the bank extended the loan, even if spring came early and the grass returned, they did not have enough cattle left to make the payments and still feed themselves through another year. Cole sat down across from her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said the thing he had been carrying since November. He told her again that she deserved more, that she should have married a man who could give her security instead of debt, that he had nothing left to offer her except more hardship, and she had every right to leave before it got worse. And here is where the story gives you something most stories about this era leave out. Eleanor did not comfort him with soft words. She did not tell him everything would be fine. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She told him the truth about her own past, a truth she had never shared with anyone in the territory. Her father had not simply died of illness on the trail, as everyone believed. He had died in debt, fleeing creditors in Kansas after a failed business venture wiped out everything they owned. Eleanor had watched her father break under the weight of that failure, watched him stop eating, stop sleeping, stop being the man she had known, because he believed his worth was tied to his ability to provide. She told Cole that watching her father die that way had taught her something about men and pride that she would never forget. She had sworn, kneeling by his grave on the trail, that she would never love a man who let his failures convince him he was worthless. And then she said the words that would define the rest of their marriage. She did not love Cole because of what he could give her. She loved him because of who he was when he had nothing left to give. The man who kept building when the first attempt failed. The man who got up every morning, even when the math did not work. That man was already enough, with or without the ranch. What do you think it takes to say something like that, in a moment when your own future is collapsing around you? Eleanor's answer was not comfort. It was conviction, and it changed everything that followed. Cole did not have a response that night. Some truths take time to settle into a person, and this one settled slowly over the following weeks as he watched his wife continue to work without complaint, despite knowing exactly how dire their situation was. But knowing your wife believes in you does not pay a banknote. And here is where the story takes a turn that even Cole did not expect. In February, a stranger rode into the territory asking questions about land near Crooked Fork Creek. His name was Augustus Reeves, and he represented a railroad survey company quietly buying up land options ahead of an announcement that would not become public for another year. Reeves found Cole at the feed supplier in town and made him an offer that seemed, at first, too good to be believable. The railroad company wanted an option to purchase a strip of Cole's land along the creek, the very land the fire had burned, for a price that would clear the bank debt entirely and leave money besides. Cole should have said yes immediately. Most men would have. But there is a kind of caution that comes from having been let down by easy promises before, and Cole had learned that caution the hard way from the man in St. Louis who had sold him prime grazing country that turned out to be rock and scrub. He told Reeves he needed time to think it over. That night, he rode home through a thaw that had turned the trail to mud and told Eleanor everything. The offer, his suspicion, his fear that saying no might cost them their only way out, and his fear that saying yes might cost them something he could not yet name. Eleanor asked him one question that cut straight through the noise. She asked him what the land was actually worth to him, not in dollars, but in the life he had built on it. And here, listening to her ask that question by lamplight, something shifted in Cole that had nothing to do with money. But the railroad deal was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a far more dangerous problem, because word travels fast in small territories, and not everyone who heard about the railroad's interest in Crooked Fork Creek had honest intentions. We need every single one of you subscribed before we get to what happened next, because the banker, Whitfield Drummond, was about to make a move that would put everything the Hartleys had fought for at risk. Within a week, rumors of the railroad's interest had reached Drummond, and a man who controls the only bank in a small territory has a particular kind of power that has nothing to do with guns or violence, and everything to do with paper. Drummond called Cole into his office under the pretense of discussing the loan extension. What he actually wanted was information, and what he offered in return was a proposition Cole had not expected. Drummond revealed that he, too, had heard about the railroad's land buying, and he had a theory about exactly which route the line would take. If he was right, land along Crooked Fork Creek would be worth many times its current value within 2 years. He offered Cole a deal: extend the loan with no immediate payment required, in exchange for Cole signing over a partial stake in the ranch's future land value to the bank. It sounded, on its surface, like mercy. It was not mercy. It was a man trying to claim a portion of a fortune he suspected was coming, using the leverage of a desperate rancher's debt to do it quietly, before anyone else understood what the land was about to become. Cole was no fool, even in his desperation. He recognized the shape of the trap, even as Drummond dressed it up in friendly language. He told Drummond he needed to discuss it with his wife before signing anything, and Drummond, confident that a drowning man takes any rope thrown to him, agreed, expecting an easy yes within days. That night, riding home, Cole could not shake a single uncomfortable thought. What if Drummond was right about the railroad? And if he was, what else might Drummond be willing to do to make sure that fortune ended up in his hands rather than the Hartleys? Eleanor listened to the entire account without interrupting, a habit Cole had come to rely on more than he admitted. When he finished, she asked him a question that revealed just how clearly she saw the situation. She asked whether Drummond's offer would still extend the loan if the railroad deal fell through entirely. Cole did not know. He had not asked, because Drummond had structured the offer specifically to avoid that question coming up. This single detail, this absence of an answer, told Eleanor everything. The bank's generosity was not generosity at all. It was a bet, placed entirely with the Hartleys' land as collateral. And if that bet failed, the Hartleys would still owe everything, now with an additional claim against their future hanging over them as well. She told Cole not to sign anything, not yet. Instead, she proposed something far bolder. She suggested they negotiate directly with Augustus Reeves and the railroad company, not for an option on a strip of burned land, but for a fair price on the land's actual value, using the very rumor Drummond had let slip as leverage in their own favor. This was not the move of a woman who needed rescuing. This was the move of a woman who understood, perhaps better than her own husband, that the same forces threatening to destroy them could be turned into the thing that saved them. But putting that plan into action meant Cole had to do something that went against every instinct his pride had built over the past 4 years. He had to ask for help. There is a particular kind of pride common to ranchers of that era, a belief that asking anyone for assistance was an admission of failure as a man. Cole had carried that belief since his father's death, since the moment he packed a wagon and told himself he would build something entirely on his own. Eleanor's plan required him to write to Augustus Reeves directly, requesting a meeting, and to be honest about the bank's interference, using it as proof that the railroad needed to deal with Cole quickly and fairly before Drummond found a way to insert himself into the negotiation. It also required something harder. It required Cole to visit the 2 neighboring ranchers along Crooked Fork Creek, men he had kept at arm's length out of pride and self-reliance, and propose they negotiate with the railroad together as a group so that no single rancher could be picked off cheaply one at a time. This was the moment the story had been building toward without Cole realizing it. Not a gunfight, not a chase. A man swallowing 4 years of stubborn pride to knock on a neighbor's door and admit he needed allies to survive. The first neighbor, a widower named Samuel Pruitt, listened to Cole's proposal with visible suspicion. Pruitt had lost his own wife to a fever 2 winters before, and the loss had hardened something in him that made trust difficult. But when Cole mentioned the fire, mentioned Drummond's offer, mentioned the bank's quiet attempt to claim future value through present desperation, something in Pruitt's expression shifted. He had received a similar offer from Drummond 2 weeks earlier. He had nearly signed it. The second neighbor, a younger rancher named Levi Okafor, who had moved west from Louisiana with his wife and 2 children, had already signed a preliminary agreement with Drummond, not realizing the trap embedded inside it. This was the detail that turned suspicion into urgency. If even one rancher along the creek signed away a stake in his land's future value, the railroad company would have every reason to negotiate primarily with the bank instead of the landowners themselves, and the entire community would lose leverage they did not even know they were losing. Cole rode to Okafor's place that same evening, in the dark, through mud that had not yet frozen back over for the night. He explained everything. The fire, Drummond's offer to him, the trap hidden inside its wording. Okafor's wife, a sharp, careful woman named Ruth, listened more closely than her husband did. And it was Ruth who asked to see the exact language of the agreement Drummond had drafted. What she found, reading it line by line in the lamplight, was a clause buried in formal legal language that extended the bank's claim not just to the land in question, but to any adjoining parcels the Okafors might acquire in the future. It was not a fair deal. It had never been a fair deal. It was a slow, patient claim on a family's entire future, disguised as kindness toward their present. Okafor rode to town the next morning and withdrew his signature before the agreement could be filed. For the first time in this entire ordeal, the Hartleys were not facing their hardship alone. What do you think it would have taken for you to knock on a neighbor's door after years of pride telling you not to? Cole's answer came only when there was no other choice left, and it may be the most important decision of his life. Let me know what you think in the comments below. 3 ranching families, united by a single shared threat, sent a joint letter to Augustus Reeves requesting a meeting before any individual negotiations proceeded further. Reeves, who represented a company more interested in efficient acquisition than local politics, agreed almost immediately. A unified group of landowners, willing to negotiate fairly and quickly, was easier to deal with than 3 separate, contentious negotiations dragged out by a meddling local bank. The meeting took place in March, in the back room of the same general store where Cole had first heard about the railroad's interest. Reeves laid out the company's actual plans far larger than anyone in the territory had guessed. The rail line was not simply passing near Crooked Fork Creek. It was planning a depot there, a stop that would eventually grow into a small town, because the creek's water access made it one of the few viable points along that stretch of the planned route. This changed everything. A strip of burned scrubland was not just valuable, it was, in the company's own estimation, central to the entire region's coming development. Reeves offered the 3 families a price for the necessary land rights that was nearly 4 times what Drummond had implied in his quiet, leveraged proposal to Cole. More importantly, the deal was structured cleanly, with no hidden clauses claiming future value, because Reeves's company simply wanted clear title to build on, not a complicated ongoing stake in 3 separate ranching operations. Cole signed that agreement with hands that had finally stopped shaking, not from cold this time, but from the simple, overwhelming relief of watching 4 years of struggle resolve into something solid. But the story does not end with a check and a handshake, because Whitfield Drummond did not take the loss of his quiet plan gracefully. When word reached him that the 3 ranchers had negotiated directly with the railroad, cutting the bank out of any stake in the coming land value, Drummond called Cole into his office one final time. This meeting was different from the others. Gone was the friendly, paternal tone he had used before. In its place was something colder, more direct. Drummond reminded Cole that the original loan, the one that had started this entire winter of desperation, was still due, in full, regardless of any railroad money Cole now had coming. He suggested, in carefully chosen words that stopped just short of an outright threat, that a banker in a small territory had considerable influence over a rancher's future credit, supply arrangements, and standing in the community, and that influence could be used in either direction, depending on how cooperative that rancher chose to be going forward. It was, in its quiet way, a warning. Pay the debt in full, immediately, with no further negotiation, or face a future where every transaction in this territory became harder than it needed to be. Cole listened to the entire threat without flinching, because for the first time in 4 years, he genuinely did not need to. He paid the loan in full that same week, with railroad money that left the family with a cushion they had not had since arriving in the territory. He thanked Drummond for his patience over the winter, in a tone polite enough that Drummond could not openly object to it. And he walked out of that bank, a man who owed nothing to anyone. Eleanor was waiting for him outside, and when he told her it was finished, truly finished, she did not cry, and she did not celebrate loudly. She simply took his hand, the same way she had taken it that night in November, when he had told her she deserved better than him. and she said something that closed the circle this entire story had opened. She told him she had never doubted this moment would come, not because she believed in railroads or banks or luck, but because she believed in him the same way she had told him on that cold November night when he had nothing left but $11 and a wound that would not close. The ranch survived. The marriage, tested by a winter that would have broken many people, came out the other side stronger and more honest than it had been before the fire ever started. And the small depot that eventually grew up along Crooked Fork Creek would, within a decade, become a modest but stable town, one that still, generations later, traces its earliest roots back to 3 ranching families who refused to be picked off one at a time. Cole Hartley never again called himself a broke rancher, not as a joke, not in passing, not even in his own private thoughts during hard years that would still come, because hard years always do. He had learned in the worst winter of his life that his worth had never actually been tied to his bank balance in the first place, and that the woman who told him he was already enough had meant it with a depth he was only beginning to understand. What did you take away from Cole and Eleanor's story? Was it the danger of pride, the quiet power of partnership, or something else entirely? Tell me in the comments, because the stories that stay with people are rarely the ones with the loudest endings. They are the ones, like this one, where someone simply chose to stay and chose to believe when every reasonable calculation said to walk away. This video is an artistic reconstruction created with the help of artificial intelligence, intended purely for entertainment. For historical accuracy, please consult official sources.